What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater. The people have asked for it. The people are gonna get it. It's time for another culture vid. But this is a first. This is a culture vid mega rant, cuckolds. We're combining two great things from this channel and churning out this video. In addition, I've also recorded another wrestling video which will either be uploaded today or tomorrow, depending on how I feel. Cucks. Now, with that being said, the topic of the day is none other than this idea of woke things and DEI and all the stuff that encompasses in the medium of video games. Now, the hater turns on his YouTube and he is bombarded about news for some game called Intergalactic, the Heretic something, the Heretic Prophecy or something like that, right? Now, the hater saw the trailer of this game during the Game Awards, right? And I was not impressed, right? I didn't like it. I don't really like space stuff, you know what I mean? I'm not really a big fan of like space and things like that as a setting, but that's a personal preference. Now, for those that don't know, which I think is very few of you because this game is getting a lot of coverage, the main character is like this Asian girl who, like, during the trailer, it shows her shaving her head, right? So she's essentially bald, you know what I mean? She has the hater's haircut in college, let's put it like that. Now, obviously, a lot of people went with the assumption that this character must be a lesbian or trans or anything like that. And, you know, even though the trailer doesn't say anything about this, nor do I see why this is important, people have latched onto this as yet another example of DEI and wokeisms ruining video games. Now, while the hater doesn't like woke stuff, right? I don't like any agenda being pushed down my throat, you know what I mean? I will say this, a lot of times, the increasingly neckbeardish video game community does get a lot of things wrong. Here's the thing. Number one, all right, trans people and gay people exist. Whether you like it or not, they exist. They're people just like you and I. At the end of the day, we all deserve our dignity. No one is saying get on board with it. No one is saying anything like that, you know? But obviously, I think we can all agree that abusing people for any reason that has nothing to do with you and that doesn't hurt anybody else is incompatible with our culture and our world, right? Now, some people might be thinking, well, this is pushing the agenda onto the kids. That's a separate story, and that I agree with, right? There's no need for kids to be sexualized at increasingly earlier ages, and like the stuff they're teaching in school sometimes seems completely out of place, and in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. However, as I understood it, this game is geared towards young adults, right? And furthermore, we have no evidence at all about what this character is like. You know, I'm using this only as an example, but you see this increasingly a lot, right? And it's almost like the internet neckbeard wrestling and video game community has almost like switched sides, right? So at first they were like, well, don't push this DII stuff down our throats. Fair enough, you know what I mean? You like something, you don't want it to change, right? Just like the hater, I like Pokemon, I don't want the formula to change, I'll keep playing it for the rest of my life. But with that being said, this doesn't change the fact, right? Doesn't change the fact that these people exist. And if someone wants to make a game with a character that you don't like, you're not entitled to just complain. I mean, obviously you can complain about it, but you're not entitled to say things like, well, fuck this, they're ruining everything. They're not ruining anything, man. You know, I'll give you an example. Sonic the Hedgehog. The hater never really got into Sonic the Hedgehog because I found Sonic to be goofy, right? The hater understands that there's a significant demand for Sonic and it has its own fans. Good for y'alls, right? I have no desire to change Sonic into something that I would like more. You see what I'm saying, right? Now, all of this conversation centers around this other but very important and very tangential and honestly basically the same conversation of representation in gaming. The hater doesn't believe in excessive representation of anything, right? The hater believes in artistic freedom. So if you think of the game as being this way, right? Make your game and the people that want to buy it will buy it, right? Now, the hater is not here to tell anybody what to buy and what not to buy, right? You do what you want. That's the beauty of capitalism. That's the beauty of America and many of the other countries where my fans come from. However, in my opinion, it's a little short-sighted, right? And this was something that like a lot of liberals would say in the past, right? They're like, oh, I want games to represent me. And it's like, first of all, how dare you expect people to make games to cater to your desires to be represented in a game. That is foolish, right? In my personal opinion, it's immature and it's childish. But now it seems like the other side of the coin, like the guardians, the gatekeepers of the video game industry and the video game fandom are making the same demands, but just in the reverse. They're basically saying, I don't want women to be in video games, and if they are, they have to be highly sexualized. And it's like, well, wait a second, man. What if the artist, the person making the game, has a specific role for this woman that doesn't need to be sexualized, right? Maybe there's a purpose for this, you know? Let them do it how they want to do it, you know? For example, Kratos from God of War. I hate Kratos' design. You know, the game eventually explains why he's pale-skinned and he has that weird, like, you know, red thing all over his body. But I think it's just to make him look interesting and stand out. And I always thought it was a silly design, right? I still do, you know? But I've played the games. I've played every God of War game. And I like it to a certain degree. I like the old ones more, but you know what I'm saying, right? I like it. I enjoy it, right? Once in a while, the hater will buy a video game that I've missed out on, right? For example, one day I bought Far Cry 4, right? Just randomly. I never played the Far Cry games, and now I'm like a pretty decent Far Cry fan. I couldn't get into the last one. It was kind of boring, but like I bought that too, right? And I was surprised to see that in Far Cry 4, you play as someone from the subcontinent, right? They're essentially from Nepal, but like it's like a made-up country, you know? So you're playing essentially as a dude from Nepal or a dude from India, depending on, you know, where the made-up country is, right? So like the hater is as white as the snow. I have eyes the color of the ocean, cucks. And when I was young, I was blonde. So the hater does not look nothing like anybody from India, right? But I don't give a rat's ass. The game was made about a dude who's going back to his home country, which has an Indian-esque Nepalese subculture, right? So I'm gearing up for the game. Once I realize what the game's about, I'm like, oh, interesting. Now I'm going to play as a guy from this area. And then I continue to play the game. I loved it. It's one of my favorite Far Cries, right? It's as simple as that. I don't need to be the character in the game. You know, write a good character. I don't need to be him. You know what I mean? Likewise, the game Deathloop, right? The hater really enjoyed the game Deathloop, right? You play as a black guy. Once again, the hater is not a black guy. But for the context of the game, I'm like, okay, now I'm playing as a black guy. And the list goes on and on. With something like Tomb Raider, the hater's like, all right, the hater's not a broad, right? I'm not Lara Croft. But in the context of the game, I play as Lara Croft. Likewise, if you're playing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game and you pick Donatello, you're now playing as Donatello, right? You're not a fucking turtle, right? If you're playing Black Myth Wukong, you're now a monkey god king. You know what I mean? You're not a monkey god king in the real life, right? In the real world. You're just a dude or a girl who's playing a game. So, knowing that, just accept the character for what they are. That's my view on representation. This idea that like you have to force it down everybody's throat, right? Like I am just as likely to play a game that's set in Africa, for example, than a game that's set in Europe. I don't give a shit, right? Because it's a game. A story can be told, a good story can be told, whether it's set in Africa with Africans, whether it's set in Europe with Europeans, or whether it's set in fucking space, well, maybe not space, but in space with fucking space aliens, right? I don't relate to any of these characters because I'm not these characters. They are made up characters, cock. I don't pretend I'm Ash when I play Pokemon. I don't pretend I'm Pikachu. I'm playing the game. I am one step removed. I am the viewer and the enjoyer of the game. It's just like a movie, right? I want the character to look like me. Why? It's not you. This game, this movie, is not about you and your mediocre life that nobody would want to watch a movie on. It's about other people. And sometimes these people happen to be ugly. Sometimes these people happen to be black. They happen to be trans. They happen to be gay. There's nothing wrong with this, right? Now, if you are the type of person, right? And I get it, you know, not everyone likes their own taste. Some people are straight up racist. Some people are transphobes. Some people are homophobes. If you're someone that says, under no circumstances am I going to play a game where the character is gay, then don't buy the game. I don't know what to tell you, right? But the hubris, right? The arrogance that comes from, I'm not playing this game, so therefore make the game in a way that I would want to play it, is preposterous. You don't tell the artist, draw it the way I want. I don't find the Mona Lisa attractive. Give her a giant ass. No, shut the fuck up. Da Vinci, when he did it the way he thought he should do it, right? And it's a masterpiece. I mean, I don't really like art, but you understand what I'm getting at, right? You don't just get to take creative direction for other people's work, right? I'll give you another great example. the movie Get Out, right? And not the sequel, but the other movie that Jordan Peele made, Us, which in my opinion is a masterpiece. Us is like one of my favorite movies ever, right? Get Out, it was like higher than mid. It was a good movie, but I think Us is better, right? Now, Jordan Peele has said, he has gone on record, that he said he wants to hire as many black actors as possible, right? Good for him. You know, a lot of people are upset, right? On one hand, some of these people are like, well, if black people want their own movies, make their own movies. Okay, Jordan Peele's like, fantastic, I want to make my own movies, I'm going to hire black actors. Then the same people are like, wait a second, you're not going to hire any white actors? No, his movie is about black people, let's say, right? And it's going to be a lot of black actors. There's nothing wrong with this. This is perfectly reasonable, right? Just like when Final Fantasy 16 came out and all the characters in the game are white, they asked like whatever, Tokata, whatever the fuck his name is, the director of the game, they're like, how come there's no like racial diversity? And he's like, well, this world is built, like is based upon like medieval Europe, right? And in medieval Europe, almost everybody was white, right? That's it, the end. He doesn't have to explain to you why he chose not to put black people and Asian people. This is the way that his creative mind thought of this game, right? It's as simple as that. You don't need to know why this guy is not catering to your like whims, right? So that's the problem that I have with a lot of the video game fans, and in wrestling it happens too, right? It's like, yo, this is the way the story has been written by the person that wrote the story. You can't just come along and say, I think the story would be better if it's done this way. Then you do it, bro. You do it and see how many people buy your game. You know what I'm saying? Or how many people watch your movie or read your book or whatever, right? People have their own creativity, and someone's creativity shouldn't be stifled based on what other people, including the fans, think about it, right? You are welcome to not buy the game. For example, the hater doesn't like space games, right? I could give a shit if the main character is a lesbian woman, a trans man, a turtle, a fucking ninja. I don't give a rat's ass, right? If the game is good, I'm going to buy it. I need to see the gameplay. I need to see like if it's anything interesting. I need to see the production value and a variety of other, different things that pretty much would align to my kind of game or not, because the hater likes playing games. If it follows this criteria, then I don't care if the character is from Nepal, or if he's black, or if it's a girl, or if it's a white guy. I don't care at all, right? Why would I? It's just a story, right? I'm told that Black Panther is a really good movie. The hater doesn't like superhero movies, so I haven't seen any of the Black Panthers, right? But if Black Panther is objectively a good movie, why would anyone be upset that it's with black people, right? Black people exist too, motherfucks. You can't just say like, well, I don't like seeing this group, so don't put them in my media. It's not your media, cuck. If you want to do your own movie or your own video game, do it with whoever the fuck you want. You want to have only hot Asian women? Right? You want to have only waifus? Then have only waifus. There's plenty of that shit on the internet anyways, right? Every anime is just a bunch of like teenage girls doing sexual things. That's what it seems like to the hater. You know what I mean? And if you're into that, that's weird. But hey, go watch that. Leave the rest of us alone. The same thing can be said about wrestling and about any other medium. So that brings us to the overall topic of inclusion, right? Now, if a studio, let's just say, if a studio has an agenda, right? And their agenda is sinister, right? So for example, let's say they make a game where the main character is a pedophile and he's a hero, right? That might border on the unacceptable, right? Because we're not going to let you socially engineer our culture into accepting pedophiles, right? And maybe that's the argument that a lot of people have. I don't want to accept lesbians. I don't want to accept trans characters, right? But the fact of the matter is that if they're adults, right, the hater doesn't agree with it. Like, if the hater had a child and the child said, Dad, I'm like a different gender, I'd be like, no, you're not, because, I don't believe that you can be born, in a different body or whatever the hell the argument is. But if you're an adult, right, and you want to cut off your schlong, if you want to cut off your wang, like, I don't want you to. I think it's going to be an error, right? I think it's going to be a mistake. But do it if you want. I don't give a flying fuck. It's your life, The same way that the hater knows, for example, that smoking, which he will soon quit, is bad for him, doesn't mean that I'm going to just not smoke, right? Nor does it mean that I'm going to tell people, hey, don't smoke. A lot of people do self-destructive things, and that's the beauty of the world. That's the beauty of America as well, right? Where we have the freedom of choice to do whatever the fuck you want. Maybe we shouldn't push the agenda, right? So that people don't make mistakes, right? But that's a different story. If someone does want to have a character that's trans, right? because they think ultimately it's going to make more money or whatever reason, right? Maybe they're going to get a grant or something. I don't know, right? Let them do it. Speak with your wallet. You don't have to buy the game. The game isn't even out yet, and people already are upset. And it's like, dude, relax. You know what I mean? Same thing, for example, with The Last of Us 2. I reviewed the game The Last of Us 2 when it came out, but for those that haven't seen it, my criticisms of the game were the same criticisms that I had with the first game. Both games, in my opinion, are mid, right? Their stories are below mid, they're generic, they're formulaic, right? Same thing with God of War, the Nuance, right? Oh, the father and son don't get along. Yeah, read a few books, you'll see that this trope has been mastered in the 1500s by writers better than the people that write video games, right? We've seen this song and dance before. But I believe that a lot of video game enjoyers are not, like, I know that they think they're smart, but a lot of them are not very well-read people. So they see something like The Last of Us, they're like, wow, what a story, what a earth-shattering story, I never saw it coming. I saw it coming immediately. As soon as in the first Last of Us, you are told that, like, you have to escort this girl from point one to the end, right? Because she's the cure. I'm like, she's obviously not going to be the cure, and he's obviously going to be forced to save her against the people that want to use her for a cure, right? To parallel the daughter that he lost 10 minutes ago into the game, right? This was obvious to anyone that actually reads books or that knows things about storytelling. But a lot of people didn't see it coming. Then in The Last of Us 2, spoiler alert, which everyone should know by now, they kill the main character of Last of Us 1. And everyone freaks out. They're like, they replaced my darling Joel with, like, some girl who doesn't look good. Yeah, that's the direction the writer had. You know, in terms of a storytelling perspective, it was a good story that was told. The Last of Us 2 story is superior because it tells a nuanced story, right? And it makes you question what you felt in the first game, which was very, very predictable. However, the game itself was mid. I didn't enjoy the game. So I only judged it based on the game. In the game, there's also a trans character. But the trans character is handled gracefully in the sense that there's a purpose for them being trans. It's not just a random ass trans character trying to push the agenda. It's to show, to explore the theme of not belonging, which is a central theme of the games, right? It's a central theme of finding who you are. That's the point of The Last of Us and Last of Us 2. They decided to do it this way. Maybe if the hater was doing it, I wouldn't have even thought of putting a trans person, right? Or a gay person, whatever the fuck it was. But I would try to illustrate the point the best way I could. So if they do it in a way that makes sense, then it's totally fine, right? This brings me to the next part of the rant. There is also the reality that these people are part of the customer base, as are their allies, and the fact that these people exist, right? And in this part of the rant, I want to focus on the representation of characters in terms of stereotypes, right? One of my favorite games of all time now is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, right? Final Fantasy VII I thought was mid. I'm a Final Fantasy IX guy. But I like all the Final Fantasy games. And for those that haven't played any of these games, in Final Fantasy VII there's a character called Barrett, right? Barrett is like a Mr. T, like ripoff, right? He's basically like a black male aggressive stereotype. In sociology, we call the stereotype the buck, right? He is the stereotype. But the whole point of the stereotype is not to say Barrett is exactly what you think he is. He's an angry black man who curses, is violent, and can't be trusted. It's the opposite. The game gives you this stereotype and then subverts it, basically pointing out that if you judged Barrett by the way he looks, you are a racist, right? This is not a big part of the game. But once you learn about Barrett's backstory and the fact that his best friend, who was white, died, or so we thought, and he adopts this guy's daughter, raises her as his own, and that Barrett is a very caring father, right? And his aggression is only just misplaced because of the situations of the game, then you learn how much of a nuanced character Barrett is. This is called good writing, right? And it's not just good writing, but it subverts a damaging stereotype, right? Everyone that knows black people, which should be all of us, knows that black people, shocker, are just like the rest of us, motherfucks. They're not different than white people. They're not different than Indians or Asians or Native Americans or anybody else. We're all the same largely, right? If you watch the news, you would think that every black person hates every white person and vice versa. Then you go outside and a black guy holds the door for you and you say, thanks, man. And he says, no problem, sir. And you move on with your lives and you realize, oh, we are the same, right? That's the point. And it's the same thing with gay people and trans people. The hater doesn't know many trans people. I don't know any trans people, and I don't know many gay people. But the ones that I know are regular people, right? It's not just like they're gay and that's all they do is like have gay sex, right? They're people just like me and you. They have jobs. They hold the door for you. You can talk about sports with them, you know. They're people just like me and you. So for example, in Final Fantasy 16, there was a little bit of backlash because he's not a main character, he's like a side character, he's not a playable character, right? But he's an important storyline character. He just so happens to be gay, right? He's like the leader of like a troop, like he's like a warrior through and through, right? He's like one of the biggest badasses in the world of Final Fantasy 16. But he happens to be gay. And people were like, why'd they make him gay? Well, it's like some people are gay, bro. Some people are gay. You know, it's kind of like saying, why did you make him blonde? Some people are blonde. You know, but you want every character to be the same, right? It's not necessarily they made him gay because he appeals to the gay demographic. Maybe that was part of the consideration. But as a player, myself, who is straight, I didn't think to myself, oh, he's gay. Fuck this guy now. You know, I'm like, oh, he's gay. Interesting. You know? Let's see where this goes, if anywhere. And it doesn't really go anywhere, right? He could have very well been a straight character. Doesn't go anywhere. Not everything has to go anywhere, right? You play like Final Fantasy 7, Cloud has spiky blonde hair, and there's nothing to it. It's just his hairstyle. You know what I mean? He just has that hairstyle to make him stand out. You know? There's different things to make people stand out and make them memorable. You know? You think, just like in Final Fantasy 16, you think that this guy's like so badass, and then like, oh, he's gay. You're like, oh, interesting. Well, gay people can be badasses too. You know? Let me tell you something. When the hater did boxing in college, one of the toughest guys in boxing team was a gay dude, right? He would beat the shit out of basically everyone that's talking crap about these video games, right? You wouldn't know that he's gay. You wouldn't know these things. Nobody cared, right? Most of us didn't know for a while. And then he's like, I'm gay. Okay, cool. Be gay. Just don't beat me up, too badly, right? Because he was better than everybody. Or not everybody, but he was better than many people, right? So the idea that the point I'm trying to make is that you can't just erase these people because you don't like them, right? It's the same thing with every other category, right? Like in the past, before white people and Jews and Italians and Irish, before all these people like weren't quite white yet, right? It was only like English people that were white in America that were considered white. Eventually people got assimilated into the culture, right? And other groups get assimilated at different rates. But the point is, these people exist nevertheless, right? If you want to make a compelling story about the Irish mafia, go ahead and do it. If you want to make a compelling story about the Italian mafia, go ahead and do it. If you want to make a story about black gangs, go ahead and do it, right? And expect that these people are going to be represented as they were, you know? It's as simple as that. Now, this rant is not over because we still have to talk about the last part, which is this. There is a difference with changing the way someone is represented and keeping people the way they are versus the idea of creating new characters that fit into these characteristics, right? Most of you probably know that the Green Lantern, which is one of haters' favorite superheroes, the Green Lantern is like, there's many people that have been the Green Lantern, right? And they've used this plot device to make one guy gay, one guy black, I think there's a girl, right? There's all these characters that play the Green Lantern, right? But they're different characters, right? This is different than, let's say, taking Batman and turning him gay, right? That is unacceptable. Batman is Bruce Wayne. I have an idea of what Batman is, right? And I would like for this idea to remain steady. That's completely reasonable, right? Then we get to the same thing happening in a historical context, right? Like the Cleopatra thing that happened on Netflix, right? Where it was a black actress that played Cleopatra. Cleopatra was white. She wasn't even an Arab. She was a Greek, a Macedonian to be specific, from the bloodline of Ptolemy, right? So she was white, like white as hell, right? European white. She wasn't black. She wasn't an Arab. She was white. She was a conqueror. She was as white as George Washington was. You understand what I'm saying? So when you change her race to placate to people, that's different. That's like, wait a second. No. Because the Greeks and the Macedonians justifiably are going to be angry at this, right? This goes both ways. There's another movie that the hater refused to see, even though the hater is a big mythology guy. There's a movie called Gods of Egypt, right? But the people that play the Gods of Egypt are like fucking Gerard Butler and other white dudes and white women, right? I couldn't do it, right? It takes me out of the movie. I'm like, no, these people should be Arabs. They are the gods of Egypt. They should look like Egyptians. That makes the most sense, you know? Their gods are their gods, so the ones that look like people are gonna look like them. Now, the ones that have like a dog for a head, like Anubis, you can put a dog on them head, I don't give a fuck, right? But the people are people. They should look like the people of that place, right? The same thing can be said about basically any other timepiece, any other historical or quasi-historical record, right? You can't make, they did like, BBC did like, like the story of Achilles, like Troy, like the Trojan War, and like Zeus is black, Achilles is black. This is just silly, right? I couldn't watch that either. I can't get into it, right? I can't get into it because like I've read the Iliad, and Achilles is described as being white and blonde haired, right? Fair-haired Achilles, cuckolds, right? So I can't because I am a fan of the original medium. You see what I'm saying? But this is different. This is different than someone making a new character and deciding that this new character, which they have invented from scratch, is going to be black or trans or white or whatever, right? This is different. And this should be acceptable. So, in my personal opinion, the people that are mad at games being woke need to ask themselves, well, what part of this is turning woke, right? Oh, in one mission in Spider-Man, you play as MJ. Yeah, I hate that mission too. But some people might like it. Right? Simple as that. Oh, this guy's not the way I want him to be. Me neither, motherfucks. For example, I don't think, and this is what the next video is going to be about, I want my characters to be manly and heroic, including in wrestling, right? I don't want them to bitch and moan like Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre, but other people might have different opinions, right? We can then say, for example, and people do, and this is perfectly fine. We can say, like the idiom of go woke, go broke, right? If they do this and the game fails, then it's like, all right, the game failed, right? The game failed. Yeah? You can't do anything about that. Then you have, a leg to stand on and say, hey, you did it this way. Nobody liked it, right? But the notion that the video game company has to address your point is preposterous, right? For example, Assassin's Creed Japan, whatever the fuck it's called, comes out next month, right? One of the characters is a black guy named Yusuke or or whatever, right? Apparently he was based on some historical black retainer because they're like, he's not a real samurai, whatever. He was a black guy in Japan who had a sword, right? Now, you may not like this, right? It may take you out of it. And you may think, clearly they're doing this to make a point, right? And even if all those things are true, this is the game they're making, right? They don't have to explain to you why the character in their game is black. If you don't like it, which to me is absurd, right? Don't buy the game. Simple as that. The hater's gonna look at the game, see if it's good, and if it's good, I'm gonna buy it. I don't give a shit if the samurai is black, green, or blue. It makes no difference to me because in the context of Assassin's Creed, it's a made-up world where fucking, like in Assassin's Creed, the one in Greece, you fight Medusa, right? You're more willing to accept that Medusa exists than there was a black samurai? Have you people lost your minds? And that's the problem that I have with it. This is, for all intents and purposes, a made-up character. Yes, I know he was based on a real person, but it's a made-up character. His background, his story, he's gonna do shit in the game that the real guy didn't do. Obviously, right? It's a fucking video game. It's called historical fiction. If you want to do this, go ahead. Go ahead. But make it historically accurate to a certain level. And the fact is, there were some black people in Japan back in the day, so this is not crazy. Now, what are the odds, right, that like the heroic samurai in Assassin's Creed Japan would be like one of the 3 black guys that are there? Maybe low, but that's the way that they've decided to go with the game. Same thing, right? Maybe, like, imagine if you're in a fire, motherfuckers, and you're burning alive, and some trans person comes and saves you, right? And let's say this person saves 10 other people, and they want to make a movie about this person. Would this be a viable movie? Yeah, a trans person saved 10 people. Make a movie out of it, right? So, by that same logic, if you're going to make a hypothetical movie about someone saving 10 people, why can't it be a trans person? You might lose money in the box office. I might think, oh, it's unbelievable, fuck it, right? Like, I don't, for example, the same way that I don't watch, like, Troy with black people or Gods of Egypt with white people, right? I also cannot get into, like, action movies where it's like Scarlett Johansson beats up like 100 men or Uma Thurman beats up like 43 Chinese gangsters. And it's just silly, right? It's silly, so I just can't get into it, right? But I'm not going to the theater and telling people, don't watch this. This is unacceptable. The movie should have been made with a guy instead. Like, no, man, if you want to watch that, bro. It's also unrealistic for Vin Diesel to beat up The Rock or for Vin Diesel and everybody else in the Fast and Furious to do all the things that they did. But you accept that shit, right? That's the problem. The problem is you need to look inwardly right? It's as simple as that. You need to look inwardly. Why does this bother you, right? Why don't you have a hater-like approach, where you play the game, and instead of you expecting the game to change with you, you change your mindset to reflect that of the game, right? For example, I play Tomb Raider, and I'm like, now I'm Lara Croft. She can do things that I can't do, right? She looks nothing like me, right? And she has an English accent. That's the character, motherfuckers. Someone made the character. That's the character they wrote. I don't make the rules. When I was a kid, and my friends and I would play Power Rangers, I would be the blue Power Ranger, right? Now, the blue Power Ranger is a dork with glasses. I didn't wear glasses. But I didn't say to myself, I need glasses to really fit in, right? Simple as that. This is called pretend play, right? There's a psychologist and behaviorist called Jean Piaget who explained all of this about pretend play. But people now are pretend playing in their adulthood. They're like, I really resonate with Light Yagami from Death Note. You know what I mean? Good for you. You're nothing like him. You're not Japanese. You don't have a notebook where you can write the shit down and the death god goes and kills the person or whatever. You're not that guy. It's a character, cuck. It's a character. And that's the point that needs to be made. A lot of people have this weird thing where they want input in the characters they make. We have games that are like this. When the game starts, you create your own character. I hate these games. That means the character is going to have no personality. Oh, you're supposed to pretend it's you. I don't want to. I don't want to be fucking caught in an island in like a Cuban war in Far Cry 6. No. That's why you give me a character that does this, that fits in more, right? I'm not Cuban. I'm not from wherever the fuck that country is, which is essentially like a made-up Cuba, right? I want to be this guy. I don't want to play as myself, Like, if I'm going to play, like I started playing Baldur's Gate 3, which I heard was great. I couldn't get into it because it's like, create your own character. I created some wood elf, wood druid or something, right? I just created something goofy. I'm like, can't get behind this. What's his backstory? Oh, it's what you want it to be. I'm not a fucking wood elf, motherfucks. I'm not a wood elf. So, tell me the backstory. Why should I give a shit about this guy's, adventure? So I couldn't get into it. I was like, fuck this shit. Not for me. Nevertheless, one of the hater's best friends loved the game. I'm not out there telling him, fuck you, you're not a druid elf. You're not a wood elf or whatever the fuck it's called. No, he can be whatever the fuck he wants. Be what you want, man. Enjoy yourself. And that's the problem that I have with this, right? In this space, right? This is why the hater is the man. Because I give these nuanced takes, right? I'm sure most people would expect me to be on the other side, right? Because clearly I lean a little bit traditional, right? A little conservative, if you will, right? Where I don't like change when it's unnecessary, right? Hence why I want Vince McMahon there, right? And I am critical of negative change. However, I am also open-minded. I consider myself to be extremely open-minded. For example, if Triple H had taken the company from Vince McMahon like he did, and everything got much better, I would be the first one to praise it. It'd be like, good for him. But it hasn't. It hasn't. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. So, to conclude, I encourage everyone listening, especially obviously those that have made it this far, to make up your own mind about something. Don't get caught up in this horseshit. Oh, the character is like a Chinese lesbian. So what? Maybe the game is amazing, cuckolds. I played Stellar Blade, which I thought was a solid 8 out of 10. I beat it. You play as some hot android, right? I don't give a shit that she's hot. I don't give a shit that she's an android, right? Aside from the fact that the parts of her being an android are being relevant to the game. You know what I mean? That's all I care about. I didn't give a shit like in the game it's you can change your costume. I'm like, I don't give a fuck at all, right? Some people do, I don't. I don't give a shit. I don't want to make her more naked so I can play and then get a hard on fucking weird motherfucks. Just play the game, Give the story and the actual gameplay, more importantly, a chance. If the game looks like shit, don't play it. But don't be bullied into thinking that you're somehow lesser than if you play a game where the character is gay or the character is this or the character is that. Play what you want to play, watch what you want to watch, and go fuck yourselves.